All right, people. It might be just me, but I think we successfully covered prop types. So we should be good to go and start talking about the forms. Now, before I go over my comments that I have here all the way on the top, I'm going to get rid of these prop types because we're not going to need them. As well as we're going to do a little bit of deletion. So I'm going to say, you know what, we don't need all this. The person list is also going to be gone. And we're going to start everything from the scratch. Before I cover the comments, why don't we create the component that we're going to be working with? So I'm going to say here that this is going to be class. The class name is going to be form, and this will going to extend, and this will going to extend from the component, obviously, from the component class. And now we have our form. So why don't we right away place it in the app since this is going to be rendered? So I'm going to say form, then we're going to self close it, and let's say right away have some render method where there's just going to be some heading one or something like that, just a simple text. So I'm going to say render method, and then within the render method, we're going to have some kind of return, which in our case is just going to be simple heading one, hello from React, and why don't have all caps? I don't know. React tutorial people. So this is going to be our little hello. Okay. So everything should be working right now. And let me check whether I have my npm start, and obviously not. So I'm going to say npm start. Now this is going to kick the development server in gear. And while this is happening, I will going to minimize the sidebar so we have a little bit more real estate, and I can close right away the terminal anyway. Okay. So we have forms in React. This is going to be our major subject. And the forms in React are going to divide basically in two ways. So we're going to have controlled or uncontrolled inputs. And I'm fully aware that this sounds like a doozy at the moment. However, trust me, it's not that bad. And once you're going to get to know the controlled inputs, you're probably going to use it a lot, or you should be using it a lot. Or you can obviously always choose the uncontrolled ones. But I think even though the setup for control is a little bit longer, so it takes a little bit more energy, however, the benefits are substantial. So, what are the controlled inputs? This is going to be our first subject. If you are familiar at least a little bit with JavaScript, you probably already know that whenever we're working with JavaScript, we would do something along the lines of input. So, we're going to be selecting something from the DOM. Let's say this would be the name of my form or something like this, and then I can get the value. Now, in this case, obviously, I'm selecting some kind of input value since this is my next line. But you also know that you can attach the submission event on submit event to the form. And the way this is going to work, we're going to be looking for some kind of input. Then we're going to get the value of the input. And once the form is submitted, then we're going to do something. React works in similar ways. However, the difference would be that for every input that we're going to have in React, if we would want a controlled input, we're going to be looking for the value attribute or the prop, as well as we're going to be looking for the on change event, and we're going to add a method to it. And then everything that's going to be stored within the value is going to be in a state. As always, I think it's going to make a little bit more sense if we do the example. And then once we're going to have the example, I think then everything is going to look much, much more clear. Okay, so within the return, what are we going to have? So there's going to be heading one, but I'm going to flip this around. I'm going to say, no, there's not going to be heading one. There's going to be a section. Within the section, we're going to have two articles. So article number one, and then let's copy and paste it. And here we're going to have article number two. Within the article number one, we're going to have the form. Then for now, the action is going to be nothing. So there's going to be no action. And within the form, there's going to be a few inputs. So we're going to have the input. For now, we're going to have type text. And I'm just going to add a name. And for this, the name is going to be, I don't know, first name. First name. We're going to copy and paste it. And we're going to say, again, this is going to be text. However, this would be a last name. And then let's add right away the submit button. So let's say last name. Here we're going to be looking for the submit button. So button. And then we have the option for submit. And let's say that within the text, I don't know, we can write just simple submit. This should do. And then within the second article, so let's look for the second article. That's going to be right here. We're going to have the simple div that's going to be showing everything that we have inside here. So in this case, I'm going to say, I don't know, article, the heading one, these are going to be my items, or let's say people, since we're going to be storing the people. And then I don't know, within this div, this is where we're going to be looking for all our people. Or at the moment, obviously, as you can see right now, the only thing we have is the form, as well as we have the submit. Also, maybe for this particular video, I would want to add a little bit of styling at least. So let me delete everything that's inside here. And let's say that for the form, there's going to be a little bit of margin all around. Again, just so it looks a little bit better. And then let's say for the inputs that we're going to have, so I'm going to say inputs are going to be display block. So something like this. And then we're going to have, again, some margin a little bit all around. So let's say margin 1 rem. And again, hopefully you understand that this is going to be the first name and the last name. I mean, we could technically, if we'd want to add a placeholder, but I don't want to clog this up. I kind of want to show you all the necessary attributes that you need and don't add anything extra. And again, I understand that this is not the best CSS that you can possibly have, but I think this is going to do it since our main focus is going to be on controlled inputs. So how they're going to work. First of all, we're going to have to set up our state. State could be somewhere on the top. So let's say it could be technically also in the app component. It could be later on as we're working with Context API or even Redux and all that. The state could be technically there. However, in this case, the state is just going to be locally within this form component. So I'm going to say state, then this is going to be equal to an object as always. And then within the state, I would like to have some properties or some key value pairs. And first one is going to be first name. And there's a reasoning or method to my madness where I'm going to be matching whatever name I have. And this is going to become clear later on. At the moment, you might be like, well, I can name this text. And technically you could, but there's a reason why I'm doing this, and I'm going to show you later on. So I'm going to say first name, and at the moment, this is just going to be an empty string. And that would be a pretty typical setup where the values are going to be empty. And let's say this would be the last name. And then we're going to be looking for the people array. So there's going to be an array, and this is just going to be an empty array. And why don't we head over here within this div? And let's just say that we're going to be rendering this array. Obviously, at the moment, there's nothing there. So if I'm going to say this dot state, and then I'm looking for the people, the moment we're going to be rendering, nothing is going to get rendered on screen because our array is empty. That should be already very, very straightforward to us. We have covered this many ways or many times as well, where we have some type of information in the state. And if this is just going to be empty, then obviously we were going to be just rendering empty information. There's nothing there. Okay. Now, how we can start submitting the forms, or at least getting the values over here. Because at the moment, I can head over here, I can type something, here, I can click submit. Obviously, the page is going to refresh. That would be the default behavior. And I can also maybe check inspect, just so maybe you don't believe me. In the console, there's also nothing going to be shown. How we can start working with these inputs. Like I said, for the inputs, we're going to be looking for two things. First one is going to be value attribute. That's going to be holding the current state value of the attribute or of the input. And then we're going to be looking for the on change method. So how this is going to work, I'm going to say, first of all, the value is going to be equal to some kind of property or key in the state. And in this case, I'm going to say that this is going to be equal to the first name. So the way we're going to write is this dot state, and then we're going to be looking for the first name. The names don't need to match in this case. You just need some kind of value where you're going to be displaying the current information that you have in this input. So that would be number one. And number two, we would always would need the on change. And then within the on change, we're going to have some kind of method. In our case, we're going to create this method ourselves. So I'm going to say handle change. And again, at the moment, let's just leave it empty. And let me show you that we're going to have access to the event object, which we should be already familiar from JavaScript. So let's write here event. And then let's say that this is going to be equal to a simple console log. And then we're going to be console logging the event. However, what we would be looking for right now is the fact that it says, okay, so you have JSX attributes. aside to non-empty expression. And what this is basically saying is that we are going to have to look for the actual on change method, of course. So we have handle change, and then we're going to say this dot handle change is going to be our method. The moment we save it, everything is working fine. And like I said, these are the two key things that we always will going to need with controlled inputs, which would be value, which we're going to be pointing to some kind of value in a state or some kind of key in a state. And then we're going to be having a on change. And then for the on change, we're going to have some kind of method. And in this case, let me just grab both of these values, copy and paste it in the second input, just so everything is working fine. And the method can stay exactly the same. However, the last name is going to be the one that I'm going to change. So in this case, I'm going to be looking for the value in the state by the name of last name. Okay. Now, the moment I'm going to click on this, what do you think is going to happen? Well, first of all, we're going to be looking for this event object. And if I'm going to go to the console, notice I click and then I'm getting my event object. So what's really cool within the event object is the fact that we can get the target. And the way this is going to work exactly the same here. So again, I can type something, and at the moment, I'm going to be getting my second object. However, let's make it interesting. Let's say that we're going to be looking not only for the actual event, but also for the target. And what do you think is going to happen right now? So again, we're going to click something in the input, and then I'm getting back the value that I have right now in my input. What would be the value? Well, first of all, I have the type, then I have the name. This is going to become very important in a second. And then we have the actual value. So the same way, let me just comment and paste it. So let's say that I would like to select, first of all, this guy. And if we have the target, you can obviously already can see that we might be actually targeting either the name or the value, since these are two attributes that are on this input. So why don't we try it out? And you know what? Again, for your reference, I'm just going to comment this out. We're going to say name, and then we're going to copy and paste it. And then we're going to be looking for the target value. And in this case, if we're going to go on the input, notice. So I have the name of the input, which is going to be the first name. And this is the reason why it is important to name them. Maybe you'll see more important scenario in like 2 minutes or so. But it is important if you're going to be targeting for something, then at least you know the name, and the name would be unique. And the second one is obviously the value that we're getting back from this input. However, at the moment, even though we have the value attribute on the input, as I'm typing, nothing is showing up here on this input box, because every time I just click on it, there is going to be a new value. So what we would need to do is set up some kind of way so we can add this value to a state and then get it back within this value attribute. And we can do this by using set state. So why don't we do it like this? Why don't we say, first of all, let's say const some kind of value, and I'm going to say text value. And there's a reason why I'm choosing this generic name, and I'm going to show you in a second. And let's write event target. And now I would like to access this value. So the moment I have the value, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write set state, since this is obviously our method that we can use, set state. And then within the state, I'm going to say, let's say for the first name is going to be equal to this text value attribute, or I'm sorry, the variable that we have right now. And now let's check it out. I have my input. The moment I type F, I actually have this value already in a state right now. And this is being rendered right now back in the input, because we are accessing again with this value attribute. So this is how it works with control input, where we have these two things with our input. Then every time we're going to be typing something, that's the reason for this on change. We will going to be updating this value in a state, this particular one, and then we're going to be getting back our information in the input. That would be the example in a nutshell. However, as you're looking at it, you already can guess, well, wait a minute, you have two of them. And this is specifically, I wanted to use this example because usually what you see in examples is just some kind of one input, and then you're being told, okay, so this is how it works. And this is true. This is how it works. but normally you're going to have more inputs than just one. So how we can start working with this? Because this value is going to be fine if we're typing here in the first name. Everything is going to be working excellent. However, what do you think is going to happen here on the second one? So let's say, okay, start typing, and notice nothing is being showed in my input, as well as I'm just getting back my one value that I'm actually typing here. And the one value also shows up here for a second. And the reason for that is very simple, because we are looking here for the last name value from the state. Remember, we were accessing this dot state last name. And that would be the difference, that even though I'm changing the value for the first name, I would also need to come up with a scenario where I'm using this method for all my values. Now, technically, yeah, you could be like, okay, I'm going to just create each and every method for every time I'm going to have the input. However, that kind of is redundant. So you might as well set up some kind of logic where you can use the same method for your on change. However, you are filtering of what's happening, meaning you are actually getting the values that you're looking for. And one way, obviously, you can say like this. I could be like, okay, if let's say event target value is going to be equal to what? Well, or you know what? No, sorry, name. Remember, we had access to the name, and I'm just going to say if this is going to be equal to a first name, then we're going to do that. And yes, that is true. You could do something like this. So let me move the value, and let's say that this is going to be here, copy and pasted. I will going to save it, and now everything is going to be working with the first name. Or the second name, nothing is going to be showing up anymore here on my input in the first name, because I'm only checking if the name is equal to the first name. Then I'm going to be working for the value. And again, this would be the reason why this is so important, that you have the actual names that have the unique values. This would be one of the options, definitely, for sure. And you know what? Let me just comment this out, just so you have it for the reference. But let me show you, and no, I didn't want to delete it, a little bit niftier option, how we can actually work with multiple values and get those values right away in the state. So I could just say like this. I don't even care about these, by the way, the console logs anymore. Again, this would just stay for your reference. But then let's say I will going to run this dot set state regardless, the moment the handle change is going to be called. So I'm going to say this dot set state, then we're going to pass the object. And in this case, I know I can use the square brackets to access the properties on the object. So in this case, I can pass the variable. Now that variable is going to be event target, and now the name. And in my case, what would be the name? Well, it's either first name or last name. So what this is doing now, this is selecting either the first name or the last name in the state. And now I can just set it equal to event target, and you probably guessed it, value. That's it. We could have done this the long way, where I'm checking if the first name matches the name property that I have on this event target, then I'm just passing here this dot set state. But this is going to be quicker if you have, let's say, 6 of them, 6 inputs, and all of them have the name attribute. But however, for this case, remember that those values need to obviously match. That's the reason why I said in the very beginning, if you're typing here first name, then in the state, it also needs to be the first name. If you're just going to have a text, this is not going to make sense, because I'm saying whatever name value that I'm having, this is going to be equal to the value prop that I'm getting back. That would be the basic syntax. So how this is going to work? Well, as I'm going to be typing, notice my values are going to be displayed here within the actual input. And by the way, we can obviously render the state if you don't believe me. And the same thing is going to be with the second input. So far, so good. Last, let's look at the on submit. So that would be another method that we can use with forms. So I'm going to say on submit. And in this case, again, we're going to be looking for the method we would like to run. Every time we're going to be submitting that. And for this, we're going to create again our own method. So I'm going to say on submit is going to be equal to this dot. Then we're looking for handle, but this is going to be handle submit. And again, we're going to create a new submit method. So we're going to say this dot, or not this dot. we need to have the basic handle submit. Then again, this is going to be an arrow function. And also, please remember that the event is obviously the property or the parameter that you're passing in. So you don't have to have the event. You could do something like this, where this is just going to be. And again, as long as you reference it properly within the method, don't use the event if you have passed here as an E, you're still going to be able to access it. And one thing that's going to be kind of annoying is the simple fact that the moment we're going to be clicking on the form, this is going to re-render the whole application. And we don't want that. And the way we actually escape that, same as in JavaScript, we have an option of prevent default. So what's going to happen right now, the moment we're going to run this method, then even though I'm going to write something, then the moment I'm going to click on it, unless I specifically clear these values, I can click all day long, but this is not going to refresh our whole application. So that's the reason why we are using this prevent default. Okay, so what would be next? Well, first of all, I would like to submit this form with these values and then apply these values here in a state. And there's a very easy way where I can just say that I'm just going to be getting whatever values I have in a state. And we can do something like this where we have const first name. And again, this is just a variable name. And this would be equal to this dot state. And we have the first name. I'm just going to copy and paste it. And right away, you probably already guessed it, that we can just change these values. So here I can just say last name. And like I said, since we can console log it what we're having in a state anyway, so why don't we do this? Why don't we say const or console log first name, then comma, last name. So these are going to be my values. Let me save it. Let me write John Doe. And now let's figure out what we're going to have in a console. Submit. And I have the John as well as I have the Doe. Those are the values that I'm getting back from my state. Okay. So far, so good. Okay. What else we're going to be looking for? Well, now I would like to come up with some kind of way how I can add for the people array these values that I'm getting back from the first and last name. However, I would also like to set up right away some kind of condition where we're only adding people to the people's array if there's some kind of information. So basically what I don't want is if somebody just comes around here and just clicks on it and then we're adding the empty values. That's not something that I would like. So for this, we're going to do the simple if logic. We're going to say if first name, and again, remember, we're just getting these values back from the state because every time we are running this on change, the value is going to be added to the specific key in the state. And let's say first name, then length. We have an option of length is bigger than 0, as well as the second one. Last name is going to be equal to a or bigger than 0. Let's do it like this. Bigger than 0. Then what we're going to do is we're going to create a new variable. The variable name is going to be person. Then I'm going to use the template literals, which again are left key from the one key. And then we know that with template literals, we can just access the variables. So I'm going to say first name, and let me select it properly. First name, then we have the second one with last name. So last name, these are the two values that we're having. This would be my person. And you know what, before I forget, let me add here the another space because this is just going to make a little bit more sense as we're rendering. And now we need to add this person that we're having here to our people's array. And the way we're going to do that, we're going to use the spread operator. First, we're going to call this dot set state, and we're going to pass it in as an object. Then I'm going to be targeting the people array that I have in a state. I'm going to say that there's going to be a new array. However, first I would like to get the values that I already currently have in this people's array. And there's many ways how we could do that. However, the most simplest and most niftier would be using the spread operator, where we can choose this dot, and we're looking for state and people. And again, if you do need to study up on this one, the spread operator, please do that because you'll see this a lot within React because you don't want to mutate the state. So I don't want to say, okay, so people is just going to be some kind of new array. What I'm saying is get all these values, what you're having here from the people. So reuse them if there is already values here, and then just add here this person. And again, you obviously can rewrite this the ES5 way, but we were going to be using right away the nice ES6 syntax where we can just have the spread operator. And this is just going to get all the values that we currently have in the people's array in a state. And then I'm going to set the first name and the last name to an empty strings. So I'm going to say first name, last name is going to be empty string. And the reason for that is obviously the moment we're going to submit it, I don't want the old values. I just want the new values. And now I guess let's test it out. So I'm going to write John Doe. Let's click on submit. Then I have John Doe. Then I can have Peter, Petero, Doe, or you know what? Let's do Smith. Again, submit. Now I'm having my Peter. And in a nutshell, this is how it would work. Again, the main things we need to remember, we do need to have the value as well as the onChange, which is going to be our own method. Then the value is going to be something that you're going to be getting back either from the parent container or you're going to be getting from your own state. Again, state could be pretty much anywhere as long as you're accessing some kind of value. And it does make sense if you're actually matching this for the simple reason that you would probably want to do something like this the moment you have multiple values in a state.